Hello, my name is Julia Mellary, and I'm a third-year biomedical science student here at the University of Guelph. This summer, I worked in the Department of Integrative Biology with Dr. Dan Grunspan, working to investigate how past experiences inform current teaching practices in post-secondary instructors. Now, many of us are very familiar with the idea of an instructor standing at the front of a room speaking for an allotted period of time. This is called lecture instruction. Something that may be less familiar, though, is active learning. And active learning works to actively engage students with course content through things like group work, discussions, and other activities, and it requires students to do more than just passively listen. Now, we know from a significant body of research that post-secondary students are more successful in classrooms where instructors use active learning interventions. But passive lecture continues to be the dominant practice in post-secondary classrooms, and arriving at a reason why this is incredibly complex. A common conception is that professors will model their teaching after previous instructors that they've had, or teach the way that they were taught. And generally, there is good reason to believe that this could be true. Secondary and elementary school teachers will receive some form of formal teaching training before they enter the classroom, but with many post-secondary instructors, this is simply not the case. Now, the statement that professors teach the way that they were taught is often treated as fact in education literature. A review of 20 papers on education research found 18 to include this statement. 90% included this statement that professors teach the way that they were taught without any citation or supporting evidence to back it up. But if we do find that this is true and that professors do teach the way that they were taught, this could lead to an incredible norm shift in post-secondary education. If more instructors now use active learning in their classes, more undergraduates will be exposed to active learning. These undergraduate students representing the pool of future professors should then naturally diffuse active learning into the post-secondary world when they do become faculty members, simply as a result of this exposure from their undergraduate education. Unfortunately, though, the truthfulness of the scenario is dependent on the truthfulness of the statement that professors teach the way that they were taught. And so this led us to perform a scoping literature review. We started by searching terms on Google Scholar like faculty socialization and professor professionalization. We skimmed papers for relevance, and we identified 19 candidate papers that helped to answer this question. We then refined our criteria. So we decided that we wanted papers that collected data. They had to be research papers. They must pertain to post-secondary education. And the primary research question must have investigated what experiences inform a faculty's decision to perform a certain teaching behavior. With this criteria in mind, we excluded 10 papers from our search. And that meant that we were only left with 9 papers to help guide in this question. So some takeaways from the literature review were that undergraduate, graduate, postdoc, and faculty experiences all seem to play a role in teaching decisions in some way, shape, or form. But there were a lot of nuances in teaching that were left largely unexplored, and several common limitations that ultimately helped us guide our next step. So we generated an interview protocol based on many of these limitations. So we found a lot of self-reported data. We know from previous research that professors often have difficulty remembering specific decisions they made during a class. And so we needed to generate a protocol where we could verify a behavior that we were asking about actually did happen in a class. We also found that many non-specific behaviors were being discussed, where, for example, instructors were asked if they engaged in active learning techniques, but there was no mention of the actual exact technique that was being used. And lastly, we found that correlational evidence was being displayed, where there was no causal mechanism identified behind why certain behaviors were being performed. So this led us to use video recall interviews. This is a think aloud interview technique. In this photo that you're looking at, this is a practice interview that I conducted with Dr. Grunspan. In our use of this technique, the participant will watch a clip of themselves teaching, and then I'll ask questions about certain behaviors that I saw being displayed during the clip. Then they will actively engage and reflect on their thought process behind the actions being done. As we were waiting for REB approval, I was able to conduct 4 practice interviews. Albeit we cannot use the data from these interviews, these proved incredibly helpful in informing how this interview protocol worked, the effectiveness of it, and refining our protocol's questions. So looking forward, as soon as we do have that REB approval, we will start recruiting for our interviews. So if you're an instructor and you're watching and you think that the study is interesting, we would love to have you participate. So please reach out to either one of us, either myself or Dr. Grunspan. Last but not least, thank you so much for watching this presentation. Thank you to the 4 instructors who were able to provide some time so that I could test out our interview protocol on them. Your help was so integral in creating the interview protocol. I'm so appreciative of it. And of course, thank you so much to Dr. Grunspan for an incredible 16 weeks and some awesome mentorship. I hope that everybody takes care. Bye.